Okay, good morning. I'd like to call our Public Works and Veterans Services Committee to order. We do have quorum this morning. So at this time, can we Clerk, can you please read one item on the agenda?
Bill number 2960, a bill for an ordinance amending section 25-11.2 Kauai County Code 1987 as amended relating to sewers.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved to approve by Council Vice Chair Kaua'i, second by
Wait, I'm not.
Public. You have the public testimony.
Am I not on? Oh, you got it. I'm not on.
Oh, you're not on. Second.
No, I am.
Second.
Second. So approved, right? And seconded by Council Member Kanashiro. Any discussion? Anybody have anything or not? Want to come up and say a few words?
I have a question.
Question, go ahead.
Is this the one regarding the waiving of the fee?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Affordable housing.
But we have a question by Council Member Kanashiro.
Wait, what?
Wait.
I'll ask.
We're not at public testimony yet.
Oh,
Try that.
Yeah, can you hold off a little while, and then we'll call Troy to the stand right now, because Councilmember Kanashiro has a fast question, and then we can open up to public.
oh, okay, okay.
Morning, council members. Troy Tanegao, County Engineer for the
Hey,
record.
Troy.
Morning,
In the
Troy.
past, I feel like we had a proposal similar to this, but then might have been I think it was Public Works said it was kind of difficult to give a discount on the connection fees because then it wasn't fair to other users on it, or was that regarding like I don't know. I feel like we had something similar to this before.
I spoke to wastewater staff, and they didn't have any comments like in that regard.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members? No? Okay. So at this time, we'd like to open up to our public, so if you can come up and state your name.
For the record, Matt Bernabe. Now, I'm just going to say I really appreciate the intent of this, but when I hear the word workforce, that's already alarm bells for me, because whose workforce housing is this? That's the first question I want to ask. Is it the hotel industry? Whose industry is this? Because they should be offsetting that cost if it's their workforce. The second thing I want to say is I live in house lots, and as you all have already heard me talk about my area being slated for sewer for many decades at this point, we have that foul smell at the corner of the highway that I constantly got to smell. And I'm not the only one, and that's because it's a lack of use. So if you're going to give them a discount, whoever this is, and I'm going to say one more thing, a lot of these houses aren't going to end up in what we, quote unquote, consider locals. That's fact. Maybe a small percentage, 10, 20%, but a lot of these are going to the open market at the end of the day. And so why should we be giving discounts for more people to move here when you get locals like me that are looking at a $60,000 to $80,000 cost of converting to septic in an area that if you put sewer, you could increase the density more than you could if you put septic in every house. Because if we tied into sewer, then people like me could actually add on units, or at least a room, and we could increase density this way if you really are talking about helping the housing issue. These are the kind of things that just frustrate me when I hear this. And don't get me wrong, I understand the intent. I appreciate the intent. And I love these councils members. It's nothing to do with, this is not personal. This is, if you guys offered me sewer right now, I would have to pay no minimum of at least 10 to 30, and that's lowballing it, to tie in. If I go to septic, I'm looking at $60,000 to $80,000. Meanwhile, you guys are going to exempt other people that are just probably going to move here, because let's face it, what's the definition of a local at this point? I want to know. I want you guys to define local. When you say local housing, I want a true definition. 1, 2 years? 6 months? License? What is it? You get license? You're local now. That's who we're making houses for. I'm just saying, I'm very frustrated on this sewer thing because we got lobbyists forcing me to get off a septic, which is fine. I don't even want that septic. I would love to get off it. I would love to give you 30 to 50 grand right now to tie into a sewer in house lots. I feel bad for a lot of people that already converted because they already put their money out. I see my light. I rest my case. You guys get the point. It's not an agenda item I came for. I'll listen to the rest.
Okay, Malo, Mr. Bernabe, anybody else want to testify? If not, we'll call the meeting back to order. Any final discussion? Go ahead, Council Vice Chair Kaua'i.
This bill is from Councilmember Bulasan and I. Yes, it was worked on before, probably several years ago, and then also in the last council by Councilmember DeCosta and I. And it was happening at the end of the term, and it never got actually introduced, but it was worked on. So that's why we brought it forward. The only other thing, and obviously we worked with the administration closely and had no opposition, and we're trying to do everything we can to support our affordable housing. And then the last thing I will say is, so the workforce housing is for all of the workforce. Doesn't matter who they work for, what industry, and the determinant, the eligibility is based on the HUD AMI, which is the adjusted medium income. So it's about your income level and not who you work for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments,
Discussion.
members?
I guess, yeah,
Council-
I'll just say,
Sure.
in follow-up to Council Vice Chair Kaua'i's comments on the workforce housing. Workforce housing is between 140% and 100%. And then they're also giving a discount for 50% of the connection fee to the GAP group, which is between 160 and 180. And again, as Councilmember Kaua'i said, it's all based on the HUD Kauai median income numbers.
And then we're having a presentation later today from our housing director. But as far as what is a local, this council, many councils have been dealing with this about trying to figure out how to give priority to locals or people who have lived here for a long time, multi-generational families and what have you. And we've always been coming up against we're part of the United States of America, and there's a constitution, and there's discrimination and all of that. So it does, and the housing director can clarify when he does his presentation, but it does have, it's easy for someone to just move here and then qualify as a local. Relatively easy. Thank you.
That's very close. Okay. Okay, so this, for me, I think overall, I think we're on the same page in trying to move this whole effort forward, especially in housing. So, I think we're good. So, can I get a roll call vote?
No need roll call.
Councilmember Cowden is excused. Councilmember Holland is excused. Councilmember Kaneshiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaua'i.
Aye.
Council Chair Carvalho. Committee Chair Carvalho.
Aye.
Motion
Motion
passes.
passes. And this meeting is officially adjourned.
I'd like to call the planning committee to order. Let the record reflect we have quorum. We have one item, minutes of the June 18, 2025 planning committee meeting. Can I get a
Move
motion?
to approve.
Second.
There's been motion and seconded. Any public discussion? Any discussion here, council members? All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passed. This concludes the planning committee.
I'd like to call to order the Housing and Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Clerk, if could you read our one and only item?
HIR 2025-02. Communication from the Housing Director requesting agenda time to provide a comprehensive briefing on current housing agency programs and projects.
All right, so we have our Housing Director here today to give us a presentation If you'd remember, we like to have an occasional update from the housing director because there's a lot of activity, a lot of positive stuff too. So at least every 6 months to 9 months maybe, we'll be having him come. So Vice Chair of the committee, Bulasan, and I requested that today and give us a presentation and allow us time to ask questions as well. Oh, can I get a motion to receive?
Move to receive.
Second.
Thank you. And, okay, I see the housing director is setting up. We have a PowerPoint and we have a handout. And the floor is yours, housing director Coversi.
Aloha Committee. I'm on. Aloha Committee Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to come give you folks a briefing. It's my first chance to come before you as a new council. My goal today, I've got a fairly long PowerPoint, so I'm not going to dwell on any one slide for a very long time. This is sort of provide a overview of both the structure of the housing agency and our various programs, and then more to the point, sort of a run-through of all the existing housing projects that are currently under development. Let's see.
Your mic.
I leave it to you if you want to jump in with questions as I go or leave them till the end. So this slide shows just a quick overview of all the different sub-departments and programs within the housing agency. The development of new housing projects is sort of the sexy part that gets the most attention in the news, but we do a lot of other things other than just housing development. Our rental assistance division that administers housing choice vouchers makes up almost half the staff of our office and contributes nearly $12 million of economic benefit to the community and helps close to 900 families who otherwise would have a very difficult time affording housing. So I like to be sure that they don't get left out in these sorts of discussions. And they administer housing choice vouchers, veterans affairs vouchers, emergency housing vouchers for homeless individuals, as well as the family self-sufficiency program that tries to provides an array of support for people on our rental assistance programs in the hope of eventually weaning them off of needing rental assistance. Then our development division makes up the other large portion of our department. It administers a long list of programs. The County Housing Development Fund is the largest these days, thanks to County Council generous allocation of funds to our program. We also administer the Federal Home and HTF grant programs, which are federal grants that we receive every 3 years to develop housing. We operate the Limited Appreciation Leasehold Program, which is how we've sold single-family homes to Kauai residents for the last 20 or so years. We oversee the county-owned rental assets, which include Kalepa Village Phase 1 and 4 and Pa'anao Village Phase 1. We administer loan programs using both county funds and CDBG block grant funds. We have been operating for the last year and a half a pilot program, cesspool conversion program. So we, if you recall, received a $2 million grant from the state, and it was ultimately from the EPA through the state to help people with grants to upgrade their cesspools to septic systems. I believe we've expended about 40% of those funds so far, helping 40 Kauai families with their cesspool conversions. And we also administer the Affordable ARU program, which is to incentivize and subsidize people building infill development in their existing properties. I'm sure there's several other things that I've forgotten about, but I tried to touch on the big ones. And then we also operate our homelessness program, which oversees our supportive housing facilities for homeless families, which includes the Kealaula project over by the Department of Water, which I think all of you have had a chance to tour, and the new Limaola supportive housing project out at Limaola, both of which are fully occupied. And as I'll show you some slides for later, we're working on expanding the Kealaula facility with 24 new units. The second main thrust of our homelessness program is coordinating with local nonprofit organizations who work to address homelessness and we have been administering the grant and aid program that council approved last year, which distributed $500,000 to local nonprofits working to address homelessness. And then we always don't want to forget about the administration and accounting folks without whom we couldn't do the work that we do. So quickly touch on the Section 8 program quickly. So this slide shows the number of assistance vouchers as well as the amount of money that this program has operated with in the last 10 years. So as you see, the number of vouchers starting back in 2015 that we issued to Kauai households was 602. That's an annual average, and it reached a high in 2024 of 861. So a significant increase in the number of households that are being assisted by this program. And concurrently, the amount of federal funding flowing through this program to Kauai households and ultimately to Kauai landlords has increased since 2015 from $5.6 million to an estimated $12.3 million this year. So the 2025 numbers are projections because we're only partway through the year, but just a slight dip from 2025. There's been some ominous discussion or chatter at the federal level about major changes to this program. It's unclear whether any of those will actually happen with the current budget reconciliation bill. But if funding was dramatically reduced, I guess this slide is to demonstrate that it would impact a significant number of Kauai households if there weren't some state or county assistance to take the place. But so far, that seems to be not an imminent threat. Okay, now I'm going to jump to just sort of an overview of our development programs, starting kind of oldest to newest. You folks are all, I assume, familiar with Lima Ola. I think you've been out there multiple times. This was the original concept drawings from the master plan. It covers 75 acres in LA. We completed phase 1 last year, and some of these slides will show you the progress that we've been making. This is back in January of 2021, shortly after our groundbreaking ceremony, after most mass grading was completed. Here's a picture of work in progress. Unfortunately, she's not here, but Councilmember Holland took this picture when she was working as an archaeological consultant on the project before she was elected to council. So this is a picture overlooking the coffee fields of a beautiful morning of work. Here we're looking from the other direction at phase 1 under construction. So in the lower portion of this circle, you're seeing on the left the 40-unit senior affordable rental project. The Lima Ola supportive housing project sort of center, those white roofs in the center, and then to the right is the 45-unit workforce housing project. In the center of this oval is the future community park, and just up the hill along that center road is where 38 single-family homes are under development. This picture is about a year and a half old. And here we are with the pictures of the completed supportive housing project for homeless families. So this is 32 studios and one-bedroom apartments. I believe we had the groundbreaking ceremony for this back in October, and I think most of you were able to come. It's fully occupied, and we've, even though it's only been in operation, really full operation since November, December, we've already moved multiple families, homeless families who moved into this project out into permanent housing. So it's already making progress helping to address homelessness, although we could always certainly do more. Here's just another photo. This is one of the one-bedroom duplexes, so each of those doors is a one-bedroom apartment at the supportive housing project. This is an overview during construction of the 40-unit rental project for seniors. And here is an overview of the completed project. This is probably 4 months ago, before the landscaping was all finalized. It's now, the landscaping now looks beautiful and it's fully occupied. Here on the other side of the oval is the 45-unit workforce rental project during construction. It too is now fully landscaped and fully occupied. catch up on my paper here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. I want to just give a shout out to the AHE Group, who was our partner in developing these two projects, the 45-unit workforce project and the senior project, and remind Council that these two projects were made possible by our first ever private activity bond issuance back in 2023, which was we were the first county to use private activity bonds to fund affordable housing in decades. Since then, City and County of Honolulu has followed our lead, but we beat them to the punch, being the first county to do that. We're looking forward to the opportunity to do, with your assistance, to do another bond issuance in late 2026 or 2027, using the accumulated bond capacity of the county for the years 2024, 2025, and 2026. So we've already begun to start thinking about that and planning for possible uses of those bond funds, which should be in the ballpark of $32 million. This is a picture of one of the completed single-family homes. So we aren't at Lima Ola. Our goal is to serve a wide range of incomes, not just do lower-income rental projects. So these homes are marketed and sold to families that earn up to 120% of area median income, which in 2024 was around $160,000 for a family of four. This is one of the first 8 homes that was built. It's got a beautiful ocean view, and this is now occupied by a family. All local families, all from Kauai. We wanted to put the pictures of them smiling, getting their keys, but they didn't want to be embarrassed by being publicized. So,
Vice Chair, quick question. So there's 38 units and 8 is already occupied or completed and sold?
There will be 38. I believe the first. So all of the 3-bedroom houses, they're being built in groups of 8. So the first 8 are built, sold, and occupied. The second 8 are in the process of the purchase agreements and closing of escrow. The third 8 are almost finished and have received the certificates of occupancy. Then we're going to start a group of 16 2-bedroom homes, which will be slightly less on the north side of the street, across the street from these homes that you're looking at. And those will begin marketing those in the next couple of months, so that we haven't begun construction on the 16 2-bedroom homes yet.
And then real quick for the community, how do they get on to?
So these homes are offered to people who are on the county's home buyer waiting list, which costs nothing to get on. It's open to any Kauai resident over the age of 18 who does not already own a home. And the only other requirement is that you take a free home buyer education class, which teaches you about how mortgages operate and the financial reality of purchasing a home. So I strongly encourage all Kauai households, individuals, to get on the home buyers waiting list. There is no income requirement to be on the waiting list. But depending on the source of funds and the nature of the project, sometimes we have homes for sale that are income restricted at fairly low levels, if we, for instance, use federal money to buy the house. But here at Lima Ola, for example, it's available to much higher income levels. And in future phases of Lima Ola and our other projects that we'll talk about, we will have the opportunity to sell some of the homes even up to 140% area median income households, that gap group that we were talking about before, who still can't afford to buy a market rate home on Kauai.
Can you say a little bit more about the class that people have to take? Is that a series of workshops?
It's a one-day or most of the day workshop. It's focused primarily on financial literacy around home ownership. It teaches people about how mortgages operate, interest rates, provides education on credit scores and how to lower your credit scores, because that's one of the requirements to qualify for a loan. So it's primarily about loan and lending education to help people situate themselves so that when a home does become available and they want to apply to purchase it, they will have a higher likelihood of being able to qualify for a loan. So broadly speaking, when we provide homes for sale, the buyers are generally still going to the private market to get loans. We work with preferred lenders who understand the process, who are offering usually below market interest rates. but a buyer still has to sort of jump through the standard lending hoops to qualify to purchase a home. So they need to be prepared and understand how that system operates.
So as long as you're a first-time home buyer and you complete this class, then you can secure a spot on the list.
Yes.
How many people are on the list at this point?
But we have just under 1,300.
1,300. Holy cow.
There are a caveat is that of the 1,300 people who are on the list, it's been active since 2008. So you're never taken off. You always maintain your priority position on the list unless you purchase a home. But over time, there's several hundred folks who when we send them mail, it gets returned to us. So they've not updated their address and contact information. So there are several hundred people on that list of 1,300 who we classify as inactive. So they're on there in practice or in principle, but as a practical matter, they're not responding or participating in the program because we don't know how to contact them anymore. So a shout out to anybody that's on the home buyers list. If you haven't updated your contact information, you should do that with the housing agency.
So in essence, just having the list and having the requirement to go through this class means, and you follow the list, right, when you make offers. So like when this 8 homes or 24 homes were available, you went to the top of the list and then you invited a chunk of people, and then they obviously had to do certain paperwork or qualifications.
So specifically the way it works is when we have homes like this available, we send a marketing flyer to every single person on the list. And they're asked to submit a letter of interest. Are you interested in these types of homes at these estimated sale prices in this area of the island? You know, some people don't want to live in LA, they want to live somewhere else. Then we get all these letters of intent back, and then they are ranked according to how long they've been on the home buyers list. The longer you've been on it, the lower your number, and so the lower numbers get prioritized. And we start at the lowest number first, and we begin working with those people. The next step after the letter of intent is, can you pre-qualify for a loan? And we help them through that process, and if they are able to, then they move to a purchase agreement and start the process of acquiring the house. If they, for whatever reason, aren't able to qualify for a loan, we would go to the next person on the list and just work down the list in order of priority, which means that the people who've been on the list the longest are going to have the highest level of priority and preference to purchase a home.
Okay, so that I mean, obviously addresses some of the concern about somebody just getting off the plane and getting one of these houses.
Correct. If somebody got off the plane and found somewhere to live and got a driver's license, they become a Kauai resident, they could go sign up for this home buyers list, but they would be number 1,301, and everyone else would have a chance to buy this home before them. So,
Thank you.
No more pictures of Lima Ola, but just a quick update where our construction plans for Phase 2 are with all county and state departments for comments. We're hoping to go in for final permits September, October, and go out to bid on Phase 2 infrastructure construction before the end of this year. So Phase 2, Phase 1 that I've been showing you the pictures of, all told was 155 units, both rental and for sale. Phase 2 will be about 175 with a higher percentage of for sale homes than rental apartments. So we hope to start work on that before the end of this year. We estimate that it'll take roughly a year to do all of the subdivision infrastructure work. And then, like Phase 1, we'll have a second process to find development partners and do the vertical construction of the homes.
So you're saying that the infrastructure work is about to begin, or you're going out an RFP to figure out who's going to do that work?
We're waiting for the comments back from all the departments to finalize the construction plan set, and then that will trigger an application for building permits. And while that is happening, we will do an invitation for bids for contractors to do the civil work to complete the subdivision. And we hope to issue that IFB, the invitation for bids, October-ish, November of this year, assuming that the permit process rolls along as we expect that it will.
Councilmember Cavalli, you had something?
Yeah, just a quick
Mike?
The phase 2, you said, so it's 2 and 3 bedrooms as well? What is the phase two?
We haven't finalized exactly what the size of the homes will be in phase two.
Okay.
But we project it'll be similar to this.
Pretty similar.
2, 3 bedroom. There could be a few 4-bedroom homes.
Councilmember Bulasan.
We'll have the 4 different types: the workforce, senior, for sale, and houseless individual support. In phase two.
So there will be, broadly speaking, because it's available, we would seek to use available federal funds for some workforce rental projects. So workforce in the housing policy just means, broadly speaking, the county definition is this for families who make 120% area median income and below. When we use that federal money, it usually triggers a lower income level for the rental projects. So the way we think of it is, broadly, we're building rental units for families that make 80% and less of area median income, which for families that are at that income level, it's very difficult to qualify for a loan to purchase a home, even a small home for $300,000 if it was possible to build homes for that low amount. So realistically, we target for sale housing at people that are above 80% of area median income, and think of rental housing for families that make below 80% of median income. And there can always be some exceptions to that rule, but that's a broad guideline about the financial realities of home ownership and the costs of construction.
So phase 2 will include senior housing also.
We haven't determined that yet.
Okay. Okay.
So before you leave Lima Ola, just to confirm, the 3 affordable housing projects, the transitional housing, and by the way, Kealaula here in Lihue, does the one in Lima Ola have a name? Just the transitional housing?
So far, we're just calling it the Lima Ola Supportive Housing Project, but we do want to come up with a more exciting name.
So that one, the supportive housing, the affordable rentals, some of them has 2-story, right, as well? Or there's a couple.
So the workforce housing project, the 45 units, that's 2 stories. The senior project across the street is all single-story, ADA accessible units.
So the 3 projects are all completed, all fully occupied?
Yes.
Yeah. So now that folks are starting to buy the single-family homes and moving in, do you find any, as far as people responding, any people saying, oh, I defer because I don't want to live in a neighborhood with these kind of affordable housing projects?
No, I haven't heard that from anyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's all really quite beautiful. So.
I don't have a picture of the ocean view from these homes, but it's up the hill from the multifamily rental projects,
yeah.
And it has a view to rival the $1 million homes at Kaua'i.
It seems like the entire project and the entirety of Lima Ola sits on a slope that looks down to the ocean, so anywhere in there would be.
Yeah, beautiful ocean view, nice breeze.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, jumping from Lima Ola, this is our next sort of following the Lima Ola model. This is our next sort of large master planned affordable housing subdivision. So I'm sure you all recall that several years ago the county purchased 400 acres in Waimea immediately next to town, and roughly 40 acres, 38, 42 acres, depends how you calculate it, is set aside for housing. We've been going through a lengthy community planning process to develop a master plan. We held our final meeting back on May 28th, I think that's correct. And I'll show you what we've come up with. This is an overview of the entire property. A little hard to see, but the large purple outline is the 400 acres, and the square in the center is the county's existing wastewater treatment plant for the Waimea. And this is a leap forward to the plan that we've come up with after 4 community meetings. You can see that up in the legend at the top that we're estimating just under 400 future homes. Not to be built all at once, but like Lima Ola, gradually over time in phases, at least 2 phases, if not more. It's calling for 34 slightly larger single-family lots, 108 smaller single-family lots under 6,000 square feet, some micro starter units for singles and small families just starting out, roughly 200 multifamily units. The color coding, the large single-family lots start up against the slope of the hillside, then work down towards the multifamily, which is the darker orange, if you can see that in the center of the map. And then there's sort of a plan for a central Main Street, which is the purple area, which will be first floor commercial spaces and living units above, which is the first time that the housing agency or the county has included any sort of commercial uses in a housing project, but it's gotten widespread community support and seems to be supported by all the market studies that we've done, that it helps to make a more viable community. If there's some economic activity, as well, helps cut down the need to drive, reduces traffic, creates a little bit of a more walkable community. And then down below is some parks area improvements, which were called for in the main master plan that the planning department worked on a year or so ago. And the Parks Department is beginning their own public process to work on the development of what you see in the bottom area, the potential stadium and green space, covered gym. So that won't be part of the housing agency's construction project, but as we put in roads and infrastructure for the housing area, it'll be accommodating the future park expansions and park improvements that will happen from the Parks Department. Okay, and let's see. So, as I mentioned, just the status of this project. We finished the community master planning project. We're working to complete the required environmental reviews. And then once the EIS is completed for this project, we'll be preparing a 201H application, which is effectively the zoning and subdivision approval, and that will be brought to council eventually for council's approval. And then after council approval, we'll take that to the State Land Use Commission for the redistricting of this portion of the property from agricultural to residential, which is the same process that we followed for the development of Lima Ola. Now I'm going to jump to the other side of the island. So this was our third large master planned project on Kauai. Roughly 2 years ago, council and the administration worked to acquire just over 50 acres in Kilauea. Notably, back in 2006, Kilauea developed a town plan for the future expansion of Kilauea town, and that was back then approved by council in 2006 and incorporated into the general plan. So most of what we're doing is simply responding to the community's expressed desires back in 2006. So I think I like to note that this is not a county-imposed project on the community. It's a project the community asked for decades ago that we're finally implementing. This is an overview, like the Waimea, just of the unimproved land. So we acquired the parcel in green and the parcel in red, which is just under 50 acres. And we're in the process of dedicating the parcel that you see in yellow. And that dedication approval request will be coming to council in, I think, in August. I think it's scheduled to come to you in August. So the dedication of that roadway to the county was a condition of the overall subdivision many years ago. So that is being provided to the county free of charge. The intention is that that roadway will become a new main entry into the sort of the commercial heart of Kilauea town and allow especially non-resident traffic to bypass the neighborhoods and get people in particular out to the Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge, which gets hundreds and hundreds of visitors a day without having to drive through the center of town. This has been following sort of a parallel project to Waimea. We have our final community meeting to review a final master plan. This is the draft final plan, not the final plan. So there'll be one more community meeting on July 31st up in Kilauea from 5 to 7 at the Porter Pavilion at Anainaho to have a final meeting to review this. So like the Waimea map I showed you moments ago, there's a legend on the side that sort of sets out the total number of units expected. So we're aiming for around 344, a mixture of both single-family, for-sale homes, and multifamily. At the top of this map, so for those of you familiar with Kilauea, this is the Konglung Commercial Center, the old dispensary building over here, and the new Hunt Commercial Center here. So we've focused most of the small, like Waimea, we're adding in a small commercial space, a live workspace with first floor commercial and upstairs apartments and multifamily. We're sort of focusing all that near the existing town core with single family on the other side of this natural stream valley. So unlike the Waimea project, which is relatively flat, this has an existing sort of natural valley through the northern part that we're going to retain with some walking paths and green spaces, just community park area. Also, unlike Waimea, Kilauea has no wastewater system. So as part of this project, in this area designated COK, we're working to develop a wastewater treatment plant that will serve not just the new community that's shown in this master plan, but is intended to provide wastewater service to the rest of Kilauea, which has a very high concentration of cesspools, as you were just discussing in the item previous, that will all be required by law to convert to septic systems by 2050. So our hope is to achieve a little bit better scale for the development of a wastewater plant to serve not just this new development, but all of town. And obviously that's a large task, but we've been successful so far in getting roughly $5 million in planning and construction funding for the wastewater system. So we hope to be able to attract more because it's going to be a high cost item. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to jump back to another side of the island. I will say also that at the community meetings for this project, there's been huge turnout and fairly overwhelming support from the community. We get well over 100 people coming to our community meetings, and it's a pleasantly, overwhelmingly positive reaction to our efforts so far. Okay, I'm going to jump back to Lihue. This is a proposed rental project to be developed across the highway from Kauai Community College at what is now Puhi Park along the highway. We held a community meeting. This is an image from just a preliminary concept image that was part of the county's environmental assessment for this project. We held a community meeting. There was certainly some disapproval from immediate neighbors of building these units in the park, but we continue to push forward, feeling that the drastic need for housing overcomes some of the neighbors' distaste for this project. It's proposed for up to 60 units. These are showing 3-story buildings, trying to maintain some view in between them so that we're not creating a block for the folks. Our hope is to issue a request for proposals from development partners in September of this year to find a partner to work on the vertical construction at this site. So one of the county's contributions to this project will be this community, like Kilauea, has no sewer system. So to make this project possible, the county intends to run a sewer line down this street, which will, I apologize, I don't have all my street names down. There's a county park about 2 blocks south of this picture, and it's the connecting road that goes from Puhi Road over to Chiefus Middle School. I don't recall the name of that road, but along that road there is a sewer line. So we are going to run a sewer main down this roadway, which in the future will enable this residential community to connect to that sewer line when they too are starting to face the 2050 deadline to convert their cesspools to septic systems. And this neighborhood, like Kilauea, has a high concentration of old cesspools. Okay, sticking to Lihue, I'm sure you've all noticed that the Central Pacific Bank building next door doesn't exist anymore. This is what's planned for that lot at the intersection of Rice Street and Umi Street. It's a 4-story building with first floor retail space and 3 stories of affordable apartments on top. There will be 66 apartments with elevator access through this corner. There will be a blessing ceremony next week for this project moving forward. It's been a long time coming, but I think it'll be a great benefit to the Rice Street community and sort of a revitalization of the Rice Street area. Not too far away from this project, you're looking back in the distance there, you're looking at the Department of Water and the Kaua'i Grove shopping area. This is the Kaua'i Ridge apartment project along the highway. It's being developed in 2 phases. First phase that we're looking at right here will be 96 apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And there will be a second phase of 59 units. So almost 150 affordable apartments when all is said and done across the highway from Kaua'i Grove Shopping Center and the Department of Water. This is being developed by Mark Development, and who developed in partnership with the county, developed the Kaua'i affordable housing project in Kaloa on Poipu Road. And this is a rendering of the future look of the Kaua'i Ridge apartments. There'll be 3-story walk-up apartments. Back to over by LA. This is a picture of the Kaiolino affordable housing project that what is now fully developed above the Port Allen Small Boat Harbor. It is planned ultimately to have 3 buildings, each with 25 rentals. As you recall, about a year and a half ago, one of the buildings burned down in a fire. It still is, they're still working with their insurance company to deal with building 3, but the first 2 are complete and fully occupied. So as you can see, these places have an amazing view of the harbor. 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. So 50 units, all fully occupied. This was, again, developed by the AHI Group, which is one of our usual partners, with some financial assistance from the county. A couple more pictures. This is from the harbor looking back at the apartments. I believe this is the building that's furthest to the west. The picture I just showed you is to the right of what you're looking at here. So this is looking directly down towards the harbor and the river. And this is another view of the building that I just showed you, looking back towards the harbor. So Port Allen industrial area is behind these buildings in the background. Okay, switching from housing development to our homeless program. I'm getting close to the end. As I mentioned in the beginning, the primary thrust of our homelessness program is building supportive and emergency housing units specifically for homeless individuals, coordination with existing nonprofits in the state, and oversight, financial support for local nonprofits through our grant and aid program, which is in its first year, but funded again for another year. We are aiming to put out requests for proposals for that grant and aid program towards the end of the year, in December, for awards in January. So supportive housing. This is construction is underway now at Kealaula for phase 2. So this shows as an overview, just sort of site plan of the additional 24 units that are going to be built are in the process of being built next to the existing Kaua'i supportive housing project. So just for orientation, the KEO emergency shelter is in this area down here. Department of Water is just up here, and the Haupu View or Pualoke Street Apartments, the existing 4-story affordable housing project, is along this area here. So Kaua'i Construction is building this project for the county. It will be like Phase 1. It will be both studios and 1-bedroom duplexes, 24 units. On average, those are housing 2.5 people each, with a preference for families with small children. So we expect that once completed, this will house between 50 and 60 individuals who are currently homeless on Kauai. Sorry? Yeah.
Sure. And that began.
Pardon?
That you're in building right now.
Yes. Yep. The civil infrastructure work, the underground water, sewer, et cetera, is almost complete. So we hope to be starting vertical, I hope in early August, vertical construction.
Oh, so possibly it's done next year?
We're racing to have it finished by October,
Oh.
October, November. Yeah. We may not meet that deadline, but it should be complete and available for people to move in before the end of this year.
Wow.
Okay, so our next sort of large homeless initiative is a redesign of the existing emergency shelter that's currently operated by Kauai Economic Opportunity. It's right across the street from the image I just showed you where the Kaua'i supportive housing project is. It's been in operation for, I believe, over 40 years. It currently, this is an image of the future redesign. I'll show you some more pictures, but this is an overview of the existing facility that's at KEO. I'm sure many of you have been there and toured it over the years. The buildings that make up this project are well over 50 years old. This is the current emergency shelter, which has a men's dormitory and a women's dormitory, and it has a total of about 38 beds when fully occupied. It's built in an old school building that was given to the county by the state. It's in need of some significant repair and work. In the back here are 7 transitional apartments. Those were old office buildings that used to house the housing agency when it was located by the Veterans Memorial Convention Center. So they are also very old and in need of significant work. And here is what is the current kitchen area that's used for residents. So the current facility has 30, as I mentioned, has 38 emergency beds and 8 transitional housing apartments. These are some images of the current facility. The men's and women's emergency shelter rooms are just these bunk beds in large rooms. During COVID, we were forced to close down this entire facility because people were not allowed to be all located in the same room. So one of our goals in remodeling this facility is to both dramatically increase the number of available beds and units, but also to do away with large congregate dormitory style rooms and have more semi-private rooms, hopefully making it more attractive for people to be willing to locate there instead of our beach parks. Here's an overview of the planned concept remodel. So kind of highlight some of the changes. It proposes to completely take down or relocate the existing buildings and build new. It has designated this area up here is all the emergency shelter space, dramatically expanded from 38 units up to 108. It has a designated family wing for families with children, a designated women's wing, and a designated men's wing. These are all 2 stories. The current building is 1 story. And each of these is a small sort of micro apartment with between 2 and 4 beds in each one. A central sort of dining kitchen area, laundry, and then in the back here is also is the expanded transitional housing for folks moving from an emergency shelter situation to a little bit more long term, where they continue to receive supportive services and case management to help them eventually transition, as it's called, transitional housing, transition out of this transitional housing to more permanent situations. So this would increase the overall occupancy of the KEO, current KEO facility, from a total of 62 up to 168 between the emergency beds and the transitional housing. And again, we like our master plan projects, we envision this happening in phases, not all at once. It's a big project. It also includes some small redevelopment of the existing administrative building to create a library and workspace for tenants, and it also reconfigures the parking lot area and adds some street front parking. This is a rendering of the potential future development. So just for orientation, this is Veje Road. That was at the top of the image I just showed you. This is the emergency shelter complex with separate areas for men, women, and families. And then these are the transitional housing apartments in an L along the back with a central courtyard.
Did you say how many transitional housing apartments?
I have that written down. The transitional housing units would increase from 7 to 25. So there's 7 currently, and this would be 25. So last slide, moving from development, just to highlight a couple of new projects that we're working on. I've shown you 3 large master planned projects that are currently under development. We're working hard to acquire a 4th project site here in the Lihue area for another master planned affordable community of over 100 acres. We're still in negotiations on that property, so I don't want to share too much about it, but things are looking up. Two other initiatives that we're working on is the establishment of a residential deed restriction program. I think there have been some discussions at council in the past about that. I know Council Member Cowden has mentioned in the past some of the mainland programs in Eagle County, Colorado. So there are numerous Rocky Mountain resort towns that have implemented residential deed restriction programs who face similar housing crisis to us. They are compact valley communities that don't have a lot of excess land to build into, and the local working population is being priced out in these resort communities by buyers, wealthy buyers from other locations. Very much a parallel story to Kauai. Residents being priced out by more deep-pocketed buyers. So many of these counties in the Rocky Mountain area have implemented residential deed restriction programs through which the local government purchases, through a negotiation, a deed restriction on an existing home, which requires it to only be occupied by a resident who works full-time in the local community. And that's embedded in the deed of the property in perpetuity, so that it will not be a vacation rental, it will not be a second home. So this is another potential tool to grow a pool of homes on Kauai restricted to local residents. The final sort of new initiative is the establishment of a community land trust. So the current housing policy directs the housing agency to establish a community land trust to hold its leasehold properties when we reach a numerical threshold. And I would have to go refresh my memory. I think it's 50 homes. So we haven't hit that number yet, but we're going to work to establish the background documents and structure for this community land trust. Because we envision that in Lima Ola Phase 2, as we build out 75 more single-family homes that will be for sale, we will hit the threshold that's currently in the county ordinance that requires us to establish a community land trust. So the purpose of that will be when it is established, the county would transfer its leasehold properties to the land trust for purposes of management. So the county and the housing agency would focus on building more projects, and the management of the leasehold portfolio would be conveyed to the land trust. Partly managed by some of the residents who live in the trust-operated properties, and partly managed by a board, which is also like the Department of Water, made up of some county department heads. So it's a partnership between the county and this nonprofit entity that the county would establish, frees the county of some of the administrative burden of overseeing the existing leasehold properties, and allows the county to focus on new development, while at the same time ensuring that these affordable properties that are placed into the trust stay affordable forever. So they are required to remain affordable in perpetuity, as opposed to just to some arbitrary timeline, 10 years, 50 years, after which the houses become market rate homes. And in closing, I just want to highlight that all the projects, we often hear different reports always come out about the number of homes needed on Kauai. There's lots of dueling reports arguing about what the number is. But highlight that the array of projects that I've gone through today account for 1,800 new homes on Kauai currently under development, and that doesn't include, for example, this new potential Lahui project, which would increase that number even more. So there was, one of the most recent housing demand studies that came out from that the state contracted for, estimated that Kauai needed another 5,000 homes by 2030, I think. So we're at 1,800 homes. We're not meeting that number, but we're making some significant progress in getting there. And it's worth pointing out that all of the homes that we are working to develop or are developing will stay affordable in perpetuity, not just for 10 years, 20 years, and then disappear for the use of Kauai residents. And that's the end of the presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Quite a lot. Let's start with Councilmember Panishiro.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. As far as the housing choice vouchers go, I know you mentioned the future of the funding is in question. Do we typically just get a set amount allocated to Kauai based on population, or how's that amount generated?
So the amount of money that you receive from the federal government in the next year is dependent on how much you used the prior year. So it's based on your performance to cover the number of vouchers that you issued. So if the number of vouchers that you are administering drops during the year, then you could see your funding reduced. If you increase your number of vouchers and you push up against your funding limit, then you could see more funding the next year. It's something worth explaining a little bit. So the number of vouchers, physical vouchers, that every county and state gets was set when the program was established back in 1982 or something. I'm making that up. I don't remember the exact year it was established. And that number is set in stone and is unchangeable unless, and we did this once, unless you voluntarily give some of your vouchers to another county. And Kauai did that. We gave vouchers to Maui decades ago. I don't know the circumstances or why that happened. But I believe we started with 1,200 vouchers assigned to the county of Kauai. I can get the exact number to you, but I believe we now have 1,140 or 1,160. If you recall the table I showed you back in 2015, even though we have 1,140 vouchers, we were only issuing 602 or so. And that's for a couple of reasons. if on day one you are not issuing 1,140, 1,200 vouchers, and you've only issued a certain number, the amount of money from the federal government that you receive to underwrite and pay the rents on those vouchers is only set by your prior year's performance. So even though we had the capacity numerically to issue up to 1,100, 1,200 vouchers, we only get X number of dollars from the federal government to pay the rent that is associated with those vouchers. So we had worked hard, as you saw that graph going up, each year to sort of press the limit of the federal funding and issue more vouchers, and we actually intentionally pushed our program into default, which means that we didn't have enough federal money. And the practical result was they gave us a slap on the wrist and said, that's bad, don't do that. But then they gave us almost $1 million more the next year so that we could issue more vouchers. So by pushing the limits, that's how we were able to increase the number of vouchers over time. Okay. And get more federal money the following year.
So we're going to continue to try and push the limits as long as funding's available.
We're trying. We have seen, as that table showed, we have seen a little bit of a drop-off this year compared to last. Our assumption is that, so numbers went up and people applying for vouchers went up significantly during COVID. And we've seen that as people were going back to work, unemployment is at a record low, that we're seeing, it's not a flood, but we're seeing more families get to an income level where they no longer qualify, so they're effectively eliminating themselves from the program because their financial situation has improved. So we've seen the number of people exiting the program tick up a little bit, which, on the one hand, that's bad because we're not getting as much federal money and we're not providing households with as much assistance. But on the other hand, it's good because it's a symbol that maybe fewer people are in as dire economic need and needing the vouchers that we have available. So it's a pro and con.
Well, thanks for that explanation.
Follow up to just some quick
volume.
clarification. So you said the 1,100 vouchers.
It's either 1140 or 1160. I'd have to get the exact.
How many were actually issued? Again, how many were actually issued?
I think right now we're at about 860.
800. Okay.
860.
Other questions, members? Okay.
I have something else.
Okay, and then we can bring it back for questions after testimony if you end up having more as well. So you go ahead.
I have questions on homeless housing. How do we prioritize those houses? I know we look for families with children, but is there like another type of list? I thought I remember like during COVID we had groups go out and like they took a really good survey of how many people were houseless, how many people wanted services. I thought we had a pretty good number on that. Do we go off of that type of list and then look for families with kids, or how do we prioritize that housing?
So for Kaua'i by the Department of Water, which was our first supportive housing project, it was in development during COVID when we had when the county had designated safe camping zones for homeless individuals in the 5 beach parks. So our staff, along with a couple of the Kaua'i nonprofits, visited all of those beach parks, and we created from scratch the waiting list for the Kaua'i project. And it was based, one, on people's willingness to come and engage with our staff and seek and be willing to take help. But it also, that project, and this was, we probably would have imposed this anyway, but it was a requirement of the state funding, it gave a preference to families with minor children. The goal was to try to at least we knew we weren't going to build enough units for every homeless person, but we wanted to at least try to eliminate child homelessness so that we don't have children living in the parks. And so that's how the waiting list was created for Kaua'i, and it has ongoing placement preference for families with minor children, kupuna, and victims of domestic violence. Those are the sort of the 3 preferences. We've continued that preference for families with minor children at the Lima Ola Supportive Housing Project. And the last time we did, so there's separate from that, there's an annual point in time count. where all the nonprofits on Kauai go out on one day a year and do their best. Nobody believes it counts everyone, but it's their best attempt to count the number of homeless people on Kauai. And after 2 years of operation at Kaua'i, the count of homeless children was almost zero. So we had, at least tackling that one aspect of homelessness, this project demonstrates success. Right? We have obviously not ended homelessness. It's still a dramatic problem. But so, more to your point, those are the preferences we continue to utilize. One caveat is that we also utilize what's called the CES system, the Coordinated Entry System, and that's a federally mandated database of homeless individuals, and nonprofit groups are contracted by the state to administer and operate that system. Its goal is to identify and list homeless individuals in that system and rank them by those who are at the greatest need. So we do select some tenants through that CES process, but we don't restrict ourselves to solely using that state or federally mandated system. And one of the benefits of participating in the CES program, so when a homeless individual is in that system, it means they're already working with a nonprofit entity who's providing case management services to them, so that when they're selected and they move into one of our supportive housing projects, that nonprofit and those case management services stay with them. So they have that assigned case manager who already knows them and knows about their history and can check in on them and work with our staff or our nonprofit manager who runs the supportive housing project to help assist and that they don't just lapse back into homelessness, or help deal with whatever issues we're trying to get them to overcome so they don't just go back out onto the street.
No, yeah, thanks for that information. Have we updated the that priority list or recently since COVID, or do we have like more updated numbers as far as how much homeless is here now, or is there more or less, or I feel like there's more.
So the point in time count was not conducted last year, but going back in time, there was a minor uptick, but not dramatic. It went from like 480 to 492. But I could get you the exact point in time count data. I may be misstating those numbers.
And the point in time count also identifies whether they want services or not, or it's just
it's purely a count of people who are the nonprofit groups fan out into known homeless encampment areas, and it requires individuals' voluntary participation because they have to fill out some data. So even if you go out and there's two people at the beach park and you're sure they're both homeless, if one of them doesn't cooperate, then they don't get added into the count. So it takes the willing cooperation of the people who are encountered during that process. But it only collects very rudimentary information.
Okay.
Adam, when you said, when we were talking about preferences and you gave Kaua'i as an example, you said families with minor children and victims of domestic violence. What was the third one?
Kupuna.
Kupuna, okay. And then you said CES system. What is CES again?
Stands for Coordinated Entry System.
Coordinated Entry System. Councilmember Bulasan?
Your departments, you have rental assistance, development, homeless, and then administration. How many in each department?
So we have 3 people in our accounting division, and roughly 10 in the rental assistance division, and 10 in the development division.
You do all this with less than 30 people.
Yes.
Along those lines, your different divisions, if you will, as far as how it's all funded, there's a lot of funding that ties back to federal dollars, where it's not necessarily county dollars.
So more than half of our personnel expenses are paid by non-county sources of funding. So, for example, The rental assistance division is roughly half of our office, and all of their salaries are paid by federal money, not by the general fund. And then within the development division, several of our staff members of that 50% are also paid by, I mentioned the home and HTF federal grant programs. They pay a portion of salaries. There are a few others. The CDBG program pays for the salary of one staff member to operate that program. So I think it's roughly 56, 58% of our department's costs are paid by non-county sources of money.
I know during budget it's pretty complicated. There's many different parts of it, and it's, so we go through all of that. It might be interesting, and just to follow up later, if you just provided a one sheet or just kind of breaks it down.
I can do that.
As far as the percentages and where it's coming from and all of that. Go ahead, Councilman Bolasan.
And then just follow up to that. Not in budget we allocated properly, but is any positions in jeopardy for the following fiscal year, or you're unsure at the moment?
Unsure. I mean, there was talk during the budget reconciliation process of eliminating the CDBG program entirely, and significant cutbacks in the Section 8 program. It doesn't look like those, and there was also talk about eliminating the home and the HTF grant programs, but I don't think that has happened. I guess President Trump signed the reconciliation, thousands of pages, only a few days ago. So, to be honest, I don't know the full details. We haven't received any formal notices from HUD or any of the other funding agencies that our money is being taken away.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cavallo.
Just a brief one, Adam. Question on the kupuna housing, senior housing. Where at with that again? I mean, just overall.
So
numbers wise, like.
As far as the numbers of kupuna in need of housing, I don't have firm data to share with that. But I will offer that at every one of our community meetings, whether it's for Waimea or Kilauea, that's an ask that people ask for additional senior housing in both of those project areas. And demographically, if you read from the UH or whatever, the DBED, they're all predicting a rising percentage of seniors in comparison to working adults in every Kauai county. So I think we're only going to see increasing need for senior housing and support for letting seniors age in place, like whatever
that's all
financial supports are required, so that hopefully they can stay where they are as long as possible and not have to go to a dedicated rental project.
Okay, but it's at the table, obviously.
Yeah, so we're hoping our intent is to try to do specific senior housing at all of our project areas.
Within the project,
Yeah, I mean, along this line, I know for probably at least the past 10 years, we've just been full-blown, we need housing, period. And I think the county's done a really good job. I don't think we should be the sole one building housing, but we're doing a really good job of getting housing online. Do you think with these future projects coming up, we need to start getting a little more strategic as far as how much low-income housing do we actually need? How much workforce housing do we actually need? Do we need to start supplying maybe gap housing or some other type of housing? Because I know in the past it was like, we need all low-income housing or affordable housing. Now, I feel like we have so many online that we're going to get to a point where, maybe workforce housing might be left out. I know our affordable housing program kind of specifies you have to do so many of each. But I'm wondering, as time goes on and these housing projects get online, is there going to be a group that maybe is being left out? I mean, we're always focusing on low-income housing.
Right.
Is maybe the 140 or the gap group going to be a group that says, we don't qualify for any of these type of housing, and then we can't afford anything on the market right now because either there's nothing available or whatever is available, it's way too expensive for them to afford. So do you see us maybe looking further into more strategically what type of housing are we going to actually need going into the future?
So for using the Kilauea project and the Waimea project as examples. So during that community master planning process, we engage consultants to do market studies to estimate the need for that specific community. So the market study for Waimea comes up with different numbers than the market study for Kilauea. And we try to guide the types, the unit mix, the number of single family and the number of multifamily. We try to be guided by not just what the community asks for, but by the economic data that comes from those market studies. So if you recall, for Waimea, for example, there's roughly 50-50 rental, numerically, not in area, roughly 50-50 rental projects, which broadly speaking, as I mentioned, would be for 80% and below households, and the other 50% single-family homes, which would be up to, and even beyond, we have beyond 120% AMI, trying to fill that gap group. I don't think we've gotten, your point is well taken, that we don't want to just haphazardly build and build and build. You want to understand what you're doing. So we use those market studies to try to do that. I don't think we're at the point where our supply has caught up. I think we're still close to the area of no matter what you build, somebody's going to want it. But your point is well taken.
Yeah, I feel like moving forward, that gap group, or like maybe even the 140 in the workforce housing group, is going to kind of be the group that's kind of left out, like the families that are, husband and wife are working, they make too much money to fall into the lower groups, but yet, they can't afford anything on the market, or there's nothing much of it readily available on the market. And I feel like those are the groups that might get left out in the future. But
well, when the county originally was setting up the development parameters for Lima Ola, before my time, we represented to the Land Use Commission that everything in that property would be for 140% and below. So our state approvals kind of lock us in to only serving 140% below. Moving forward with Kilauea and Waimea, there's no law that requires us to make every single unit 140 or 120% and below. We need to be at least 50% to qualify it as an affordable housing project. But as sort of demand reveals itself through the sales process, there's nothing that stops us from offering a portion of the homes for up to 140, 160% households. And last year, we council approved legislation that allows us also to give preferences in the sales process to essential workers, to firemen, medical personnel, educators, first responders, lifeguards. So we can carve out those sorts of needed housing types for our community as well as we move forward in these processes. So we set up the legislative system that allows us to do that.
okay, no, thanks.
To some extent, it sort of connects to how much land the county has available, right? I mean, because when you have big projects like Lima Ola and then now maybe Waimea 400, Kilauea not so much because it's only 40, 50 acres or whatever, not hundreds, right? That's where the county can, I mean, I think the Lima Ola is a successful example of having those single family homes, and there's 24 already and another 8. And then in the second phase, there'll be a whole bunch more as well, too, like you said, 70 or so, right? So in one of your last slides, when you talked about potentially something in Lihue, are we also looking at a big project that could have all the levels of different types of
Yes.
housing? Yeah. And, when we talk about, we went extensively in the, when you asked about homeless housing, transitional housing, and how you prioritize. Obviously, for renters, we have the HUD, Section 8 wait list. But what about just the renters in our projects, like in the workforce housing at Lima Ola? Did the renters in there get off of some list?
So I'll use Lima Ola as an example. So when we sought development partners to develop multifamily projects within Lima Ola, we put out a request for proposals, and asked for them to respond as to how they would build it out. And in that process, they proposed to us a tenant selection plan, which we can tell them through the selection, so we choose which of the proposals we like best, and we can work with them to modify that tenant selection plan to our requirements. But once we have come to an agreement and we enter into a development agreement with them to develop the units, the way it works is we keep the ownership of the land, we issue them a ground lease, and they are allowed to operate that rental project for a period of time under the ground lease, and then it would revert to the county after that. So once we have negotiated and established that tenant selection plan for that project, it's up to the owner and operator to administer it. So at Lima Ola, for example, the AHE Group was the developer. They contracted with EAH Housing to manage the facility. So EAH administered, solicited for and administered a wait list specific to that project. So there is not unlike the home buyers list, which is island-wide, there is not an island-wide renter waiting list. It's developed specifically for each project. So when Lima Ola was getting close to finishing, they worked to create their own wait list. When Kaua'i in Port Allen was getting close, they created their own system to establish a wait list based on the tenant selection plan that they had adopted. So that's generally how it works.
So in essence, we don't necessarily have the same kind of build-in to encourage or to facilitate more long-time families, because with the purchase list, they had to take that class. You have to be a first-time buyer. We have a long list. There's people on there since 2008. But with these smaller individual projects where we're only a partner with the land, the management company themselves, as a part of the proposal, tell you how they're going to do.
Well, we can negotiate things with them through that process. You're partly correct, with the caveat that we can negotiate some things. So at Lima Ola, for example, there was a preference for people who were already employed in that area. Mm-hmm. So if you were employed in Port Allen, for example, you would get an extra point as a person on the waiting list for Lima Ola or for Kaua'i. We can also, as I mentioned, we can also request that they include those sort of essential worker preferences. Mm-hmm. So one of the catches in the multifamily projects is that most of them, even though they're on county land in county projects, they are typically dependent, because of the level of subsidy required, they're still dependent on things like federal tax credits or state funding grants. And when you start to take, or you rely on that federal money, you're stuck with some federal requirements. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned before, it's unconstitutional to establish a durational residency requirement. You can have a residency requirement, but you can't say it's 10 years. If you were sued, you would lose. So when you're using those federal program monies to help build those projects or federal tax credits, you can't discriminate based on a durational residency requirement. And that also goes hand in hand with the federal rental assistance program. We cannot tell somebody who just got here that they cannot apply for a rental assistance voucher, because it's a federal program and we're required, whether we like it or not, to follow the federal guidelines. There are certain practical things that make it difficult for somebody who is not here to find a rental unit, for example. Yeah. So there are subtle ways that it preferences local residents, but because it's a federal program, we can't impose strict residency and certainly not time requirements for residency.
Do you have an idea of the list, how many are on the list for the HUD Section 8 waiting to get a voucher?
Last time I checked, there were about 3,000 people on the waiting list.
3,000. So the new person who comes and wants to sign up for that.
Here's an important thing to note about the rental assistance program. Because we have more vouchers than we have more potential vouchers than we have issued.
Yeah.
We are really one of the few jurisdictions in the country that maintains an open waiting list. So most places you can't sign up for their waiting list because it's full, and they like City and County of Honolulu is usually full, and when they get to a point of having some vouchers, they'll open their waiting list maybe for 4 days for people to sign up, and then it'll be closed again for a year. Because our waiting list is open, anybody in the entire country can sign up for our waiting list. That's part of the federal rule. So if someone in Ohio can log into their federal Section 8 program and they can identify that Kauai has vacancies. But when we do our pull, when we pull people from the waiting list, we can preference local residents. So even though people can sign up from anywhere, when we issue vouchers, we can preference local residents.
So when you pull, you can preference local residents. But when you pull, are you also pulling from the highest part of the list? If you have 3,000 people on the list and you only have, whatever,
So
50 vouchers available, you're going to go to the first.
Yep. Might be best for me to get my Section 8 manager to do a separate briefing. But when you do a pull, you set the parameters of your pull. So you can, for instance, do a very low income pull. So it would, from that 3,000 people, it would select the lowest income people from that pool. You can do a pool that preferences local residents. So you can permissibly set the parameters of how you take people from the waiting list. It's not just a first come, first serve process.
Thank you. Others? No? Okay. Thank you for now. While the rules are suspended, do we have any anyone in the room would like to testify on our presentation? Please come forward.
Matt Bernabe for the record, and there's a lot to digest. First of all, just being on a list doesn't make you local, like we just heard. And I would like to add, what I'm about to say straddles both homeless and newcomers workforce. Since you guys using the word workforce, new transplant workforces and new homeless are way better at utilizing county and state agencies than our locals. So if you went down that list of 3,000 people and you asked them, where did you graduate high school? I guarantee 50% of that list did not go to school on Kauai. So once again, what is a local? And we heard anybody that's in the federal government can apply. Anybody, any citizen can apply on this list. Yeah, you can scrutinize at the selection process, but I'm telling you, I know people that are locals that have benefited from this process. But I also know my daughter's classmates that was only here 2 years was living in some of these projects that we had in the past, that we say the same exact talking points. I'm not going to waste my time on that because I'm going to go to sewers because that's why I'm here. We don't even know if we're going to get the federal funding to finalize these projects, and we want to discount this connection. We need all the money we can get from these projects. We should not be discounting any sewers for any workforce housing because if they're willing to, hold on, this is Jermaine. If they're willing.
That was on prior
okay,
item. So we're talking about the housing presentation.
I am, and I'm going to tie it in right now.
Okay.
What I just said is germane to the housing presentation.
Okay.
Let me continue. If I hear you guys talking about all these new projects with all these new sewers, and you're going to put a couple of apartments and then retrofit the rest of Puhi with sewer because they only can tie in right there, I can make the same argument for house lots. You guys can retrofit house lots and tie me into the highway, and you can increase density right in house lots and achieve your same goal. So I want to reiterate. I want sewer in house lots. I'm tired of waiting at that light and smelling shit. I said it once before. I'm going to say it again. If you sit at the light in house lots, I'm legal. That's a legal word. That's a legal word. I can use that word. I can. That's decorum. That's decorum. Sewers was on this list. I'm talking about sewers, and I can smell feces. There. You like the regular word? But I can use the word shit. And feces is what you smell at the light. Tourists smell it while they're at the gas station, at my light, while they're eating fried chicken, while they're at the bar. And every time I go to Kapaa Town and make a left turn, that's what I smell. You just want to retrofit house lots? Then I'll stop grumbling. You guys keep talking sewers for all these other areas, I'm gonna grumble.
Thank you.
Shit is a legal word. Challenge me, man. Go see.
Anyone else in the audience would like to testify? Come forward. Please, no swear words.
Not even. I don't follow that.
Legal or not.
Yeah. Anyway, Sherry Cummings for the record. I agree with one thing, plenty to digest. That's about as far as I'll go. Couple things I like to talk about. First of all, my family couldn't be here. That said, Kaua'i is amazing for them. They were one of, and I want to make this clear, you know, like Adam, I know Adam in his personal capacity. I've dealt with him sometimes in regards to housing situations and my concerns, and I'll call it what it is. I was there. What Adam said is 100% occupancy for Kaua'i is not true at all. Not at all. Very few. I've been there. Beautiful. Very few families are in there. They're struggling. They're struggling to get people to be in that properties. They have a deadline. So Councilman Kaneshiro brought up a good point. We're building for these types of families that couple things that you brought interesting points up, which is true. They don't know how to get into the system. I speak on behalf of not only Nihal family, but I manage a company where part of my demographics is the Marshallese population. They are very, very not part of statistics because they have opportunities to come and participate, but they're not in that particular so-called count. Some, I push them, and it's a process. And if no one is there to guide them through the process, they easily fall in the cracks because it is multi-pronged in order to have assistance. You got to go through one agency, you got to go to this other agency to be on this one particular list, and then this agency, and I've sat in county and state meetings as much as around 2 to 3 months ago when they were trying to address the Marshallese population that was removed from this housing project. So they had to come quick. We had the Lieutenant Governor's liaison with us to address this thing, and it's still not solved, far from solved. Because we had the Marshallese community again that's living in houseless areas, in the beaches, affected by COVID. Nobody talks about that. I was just with his person, Farrah Aquino. I called up another person. I need help. These families all affected by COVID. Huge population, children, 1-year-old affected, whole communities. And what they said, no, there is no area for them. We're filled here. We can't here. They have a situation they got to go to. They had one person that is trying to be an interpreter to a whole community of Marshallese. And we're not solving it. We're not solving the problem. I don't know if you guys want to ask. I'm sorry, the red light went off. If there's anybody else.
Staff, the red light went off, but the staff let her continue for her second 3 minutes. So.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
But so much to talk about. And please, the average people don't understand when you folks talk 60 AMI, 120 AMI, 140 AMI. We can talk, we can understand. But they don't understand. You go over there and you look at Kaua'i, and I asked, what is for somebody to get in there? Family of 2, 63,050. Who in our community, locals, can do that? Cannot. You hit it on the head when you asked that question. My question is, if you cannot fulfill that housing population with the demographics that you guys are asking for, what next? What happens? What happens? What happens to the federal dollars that supports those projects? What does it become? Does the county pay? I don't know what the konani is here. Does the county pay back? Does it leave it open for others? Are we riding, piggybacking so that others create opportunities for others? It's amazing. It's a beautiful project. I put a video out there. Phenomenal. You have elevators in there. Is it really for them? Is it really that we're just going to let it go? And then what happens? Is that how we're going to address gap? When we default on crap like that? And if we're talking about helping, look at the wait list for DHHL beneficiaries. In none of those projects there. You guys talk about partnerships with nonprofits. You folks talk about AHE Group, which did amazing work. I don't diss that. You talk about the 400 that is right down there. That is at the foot of us who is trying right now to fight a housing project, some of us, for Kuleana homesteading. This is a new project that's coming out with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. We had two.
That's your time.
But help us. They're shoving us in the mountains.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, before I call the meeting back to order for final discussion, does anyone have any further questions for our housing director? No? Okay, I will call the meeting back to order and then final discussion. Councilmember Kaneshiro?
Yeah, I just want to thank Adam for the presentation. I mean, it's a big presentation for a lot of housing that's coming up. I was thinking you're going to put some of the past projects, which there's a lot of past projects that were completed too recently. So when everybody asks, what is the county doing for housing, there's actually a lot of housing projects going on. I know a lot of my questions went towards homeless, and I do have concerns about the homeless population that doesn't want help. I think we start to see a lot of trash along our roads. I'm not sure what our solution is on those right now. Ideally, I'm so happy that we started that Kealaula project where we're actually providing housing for homeless that want help. I mean, the brightest light on that is that we're breaking the cycle of homeless for a lot of these kids, right? Their parents were homeless, their parents are homeless. These kids, they're breaking that cycle. But at the end of the day, we have a population on Kauai that doesn't want any help. And I'm not exactly sure what we do with that population. You see them on the sides of the road, walking around. You see a lot of trash in the bushes. That's one I don't know what the solution is, but I'm glad we do have these homeless houses where we are able to help people that want help. And just keep up the good work. I mean, obviously these projects take so long. I can't remember when Limaola started, but it's actually pretty refreshing to see the houses actually going up. And seeing phase 1 going through, and Waimea 400, Kilauea, all those projects are going to take a while to develop, but at the end of the day, I think the time and energy spent on it is well worth it. And I just want to thank you for your efforts and thank everyone that had to work on all these projects. I think Bernard was probably mayor when we were trying to do these, but you can see them start to develop, and it's a really good feeling to see them develop. So thanks.
Councilmember Carvalho?
Yeah, again, just wanted to holler at them and our housing agency for all the work that they've been doing. I mean, in general terms, from workforce housing, senior family, I mean, all the different areas and how we trying to really reach out to our entire island now. Limaola, to me, is the one that I had more opportunity to work with, but at the same time to see it develop. And what we can do as decision makers to continue to provide the support. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and there are as a part of our community that just chooses to be houseless. How do we support that? But at the same time, kupuna housing, senior, all of that, different areas is very important. And I know that we are addressing each area And I like the idea of getting out to the different parts of our island. So continue to do that work, whatever we can do to continue to support. You're never going to have everybody agreeing or saying, this is what it is. But for me, I think whatever we can do to continue, because we are hitting every single area of the need for housing on our island. And we just need to continue to do that. So mahalo for the presentation and look forward to more opportunities.
Councilmember Bulasan.
Yeah, I want to thank Vice Chair Cooley for putting this on the agenda. And wow, I just think about, I want to echo everything that was shared, but you just think about the last 6 years and the tremendous progress we've had on solving our toughest issue here on Kaua'i. It's kind of phenomenal and unbelievable. It's pretty unfathomable to understand that this one statement right here, that the largest housing developer is the county right now, trying to help the affordable housing areas, rentals, and even first-time home buyers. That is not something common anywhere in the world. And so it just shows how much commitment our administration, our team, the council, the previous councils over the last few years have prioritized this issue and is working towards making sure we solve it. But with all the flowers that we can give, you still get the calls. I'm sure you guys get the calls every day. Local family, born and raised here, getting priced out still. And so we cannot take the foot off the pedal. I think all the upcoming projects, we got to push harder. I know there's some stuff like what we've introduced in the previous discussion that will definitely help. So anything that we can do to continue this momentum is important. I love the fact that we're building up towns. We're helping the towns become more successful. And so I love the work that we're doing, and I don't want to stop now. So hopefully we can keep going and get the support from our community to keep rallying for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll close with, of course, a big mahalo nui loa to Director Reversi and his entire team at the Housing Agency for all the work that they continue to do. I think it's really important that we get updated like this every now and then we just keep going forward. With all the units coming online, and I know you talked about the 5,000, the study that said we need 5,000 new units by 2030, but with all of what you shared with us, that's 1,800 units. So I think that's pretty significant, because if just 5-10 years ago we were talking about 100 units here and 50 there, and it was just nowhere near 1,800. So I mean, I think this only validates the significant increase in our investment that Council has made to our housing development fund. And our land is limited, surely, county lands, but that's why we partner with others, with maybe state lands, and we are looking to maximize the lands. And I think that's why often it happens to be the lower income apartment type buildings where you're putting more units in a small area, because we really are trying to get as many units online as possible. So until we get significantly more chunks of land, which I know some of that is happening too, with the potential of more lands in Lihue and all. But we are, doing very good, and we just need to keep it up, because we still need hundreds and hundreds, thousands more units. I'm very, very happy with what's happening with the transitional housing, and that the 24 additional units are coming online in right here in Lihue, and that eventually we'll have plans for that in Waimea as well. I think when there was some talk about these Marshallese families, those families, we could help those families the same way we helped other families with Ke Laula, when we do focus on families with kids, kupuna, and victims of domestic violence. So surely there's not enough of these transitional units, but hopefully we can, with those priorities, reach out to those specific families. The one thing I'll note that I was really happy to see too is the progress with the homeless shelter redevelopment concept design. I think it's incredible that we're planning to really multiply the amounts of units available, and then also to make those units the type that people will want, right? I mean, if you've gone by that homeless shelter over the last 10, 15, whatever years, just very old, very outdated, very unappealing, unattractive, just concrete with a parking lot. I mean, yeah, in desperate times, that's what you got. That's all you got, But I think the whole push after COVID to come into individual units with more privacy. I mean, people, especially homeless families with children and everything, their own sense of security comes from having their own private space. So I think this is markedly better, and I'm so glad we're moving in that direction and partnering with others and getting the kind of investment needed to make that happen. And just by the pictures with the landscaping and the vegetation and everything, it's just 1,000 times better. So I'm really, really glad that we're moving in that direction and maximizing the space by doing 2 levels and all. So there's so much to talk about, but I'm very happy with what we're doing, and I recognize that we need to do a lot more, and we as the council is always there to support our housing agency. So thank you again so much, and keep up the good work. Members, any other final discussion? Okay. Seeing none, the motion is to receive. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Being no further business, the Housing and for Housing and Intergovernmental Relations Committee is adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Finance and Economic Development Committee. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. The only item on our agenda is the minutes of the June 18, 2025 Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Anyone in the audience wishing to testify? Any questions or discussion from the members? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Seeing and hearing no further business, this agenda item is now adjourned.
We have no items for the Committee of the Whole, so today's meetings are completely adjourned. Thank you all.